So far throughout this course, you've learned about what a cluster is, you've learned about the control plane, and you even saw what a pod is. But you haven't seen anything within our cluster or within your cluster, right? So you've learned about the scheduler, the API, the cluster store, but you haven't seen anything. So in this section, let's go ahead and explore our cluster so that you know exactly where things are. So I want to show you all of the components that make up the control plane and how you can view the nodes, so on and so forth. So let's go back to the terminal. And in here, remember before we use this command, so minikube and then status. So this gives us the status for our cluster. So here you can see that the type is control plane and the host is running the kubelet API server, and then we have the kube config, and time to stop is non-existent. So what I want you to do is, so remember, currently we have one node, and that is the master node. So here, go ahead and type kube and then ctl get and then nodes. And check this out. So in here, we have one node. So name minikube, the status is ready, and the roles, you can see that is the control plane and master, and it's been up for 46 hours now, and this is the version right here. So this is this master node right here. And currently in our cluster, we only have one node. Now let's see the control plane components. So if I go back to my terminal, and in here, I'm going to clear the screen. So clear or control L, and then type kube and then ctl and then get and then pods. So you've seen this command here before. And if I type, or actually if I press enter, you can see that no resources found. And this is because in the default namespace, we haven't got anything, right? Before, remember, we created a pod in this default namespace. And we're going to cover more about namespaces, but namespaces is a construct that allows us to logically separate our cluster. So what I want to do here is say kubectl get pods and then dash and then capital A. So I want to get all the pods in all namespaces. So press enter. And let me actually zoom out a little bit. And let me type the same command again. So kubectl get pods and then dash capital A. And check this out. So now we actually have a bunch of pods. And if you look carefully, you can see that, for example, right here, name etcd minikube. And right here, this is the cluster store. So you've learned about the etcd component within the master node. Also have a look, kube API server, and then we have controller manager, we have kube proxy, we have the scheduler, so you've learned about scheduler, and then you have the storage provisioner, and you didn't see this, and also core DNS. This is for service discovery, and I'm going to touch upon more on these later. But here you can see that all of these components are running. You can see the status, they're running. And for the storage provisioner, there was 3 restarts right here. And also the namespace right here is within kube and then dash system. So if I go ahead and basically if I go up a couple of times and I want to basically create our pod in here. So remember before we ran kubectl run hello world. So let's just run this again. And now if I clear the screen and then if I say get pods, you can see that we have one pod in the default namespace. And if I get all, so dash and then capital A, you can see that it's actually included in here and the namespace is default. So there you have it. I just wanted to explore the cluster together with you because it's good when you see the diagrams, but you also see using kubectl so that you know exactly what is going on. And one thing to note here is that we don't have the cloud controller manager because we're not running Kubernetes within, for example, AWS or Google Cloud, right? We are running the Kubernetes cluster in our local machine. Therefore, Minikube does not need to have the Cloud Controller Manager. Next, let me go ahead and show you how to SSH into the master node.